All right, let's go in 3, 2, 1, action. Anthony,
Jonathan.
welcome to the game experience.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
No worries. Interesting day today.
Yes.
Yeah. Heard about people being stabbed, and
Yeah.
first time I've ever met a guy that's been shot 5 times in the face. I thought 50 Cent was the only person.
5 times, we'll show you. 50 Cent got shot 5 times, but not in the face. He got shot twice in the face. So
and he walks with a limp. So.
This guy was walking. Yeah, he looked normal too. He didn't look like he'd been shot, but he showed us pictures and he showed us the newspaper article. So he wasn't lying. So.
The guy just walked into the shop, and I only heard half the story, but look, we won't disclose too much information because it's. I'm a bit scared.
And it's not our business.
It's not our business.
He's got a titanium face now. Apparently,
bit like Wolverine, but
like Wolverine spitting out bullets on the operating table. So it's an interesting experience. I think I have things like that happen from time to time. But we did have someone stabbed earlier this morning, and it was a fatal stabbing.
They got caught, I hope.
The suspect, person of interest, got caught. This guy walks in at the back end of the day. So I walked in the morning at that, and then the back end of the day of this guy had been shot in the face 5 times. So interesting day.
I thought it was only 50 Cent, but anyway. So look, is this? I don't know too much. I know a little bit about the history of this store, like Knockout Nutrition, but I do remember, like, probably the first time I met you would have been in St. Mary's.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Is this your thing, and is this a part of you, or because I remember you working in St. Mary's Knockout?
Yeah.
So is this actually your sort of franchise? Is this your?
So that is a little bit confusing for people, but 2005 is when the Knockout brand started.
Yeah.
The original owner was a guy named Nigel, who I think you do know. Then myself, I pretty much started 2005. Just as doing part-time, I was studying dietetics, and then I ended up leaving that after being there for a good 11 years or so to start the Penrith branch. And then we had challenge after challenge. We were burnt down. Our store was burnt down and arson attacked.
Only in Penrith.
Yeah, only in Penrith. Then we moved to the next door location in Penrith, and had more issues there, and then over to Emu Plains. Yeah.
From the issue next door, you had the same issues next door?
No, different issues.
Just different issues.
Yeah, different issues. Yeah, subleasing, or they just things that didn't work out business-wise, which were all learning experiences for me. And I like the guy getting shot in the face. I think they're still living, right? I'm just like you grow through what you go through in that respect. And I think that's where we are in Emu Plains right now. We are growing and that sort of thing. And I think all of those things that have happened along the way have put us into the position where we are right now.
I think here you're better, like traffic wise and stuff like that. You're getting like 50% of people coming down from the mountains here. You know, because you're either got the other side M4 or here, but you think about Corrine Avenue, what are you going to get there? You know, a couple of people taking a shortcut to Kingswood Park. No, we all know that no one in Kingswood Park takes supplements.
And it was I think it was definitely more of a remote location in a destination store at Corrine Avenue, whereas here's a little bit more mainstream. People see it more exposure, like you said. So,
and gym next door too.
And gym next door
definitely does help. It's out the way over on Corrine. Do you find you've got more business here?
I find that, well, they had, that was a store previously to me taking over that. So they had
Muscle Nation?
Mass Nutrition originally, and then Bodybuilding Nation changed too. And then we took over shortly after thereafter. But I think they had accrued customer recognition with it being a store there. So they sort of, even though they didn't know what store it was, they were like, oh, there's a kind of a store in the local area, and that's where it is. So when we left, we had to restart again in a way. So even when we burnt down the first time, it was sort of like we moved next door, and people just thought.
Burnt down the first time.
Burnt
down the second time.
Oh well, we moved twice. So we did get our St. Mary's store attacked as well. So must be doing something right or something wrong, depends on how you look at that scenario, I suppose.
I mean, look, who's got worse last, the knockout thing or old mate getting
Yeah, I think I'd rather get the store burnt down than shot in the face 5 times, or even stabbed and dying for that matter. So yeah, you got to take the good with the bad, I suppose.
That's crazy.
But I take away the lessons of anything, and if anything, it's about resilience. And like that guy walking around right now, he was getting back into training after how many years? It's just like the resilience you had to step back up.
So what's your thing? Because I know I've seen you hit like a floor to ceiling bag, and I see you do a little bit of boxing work here and there. Yep. So have you ever took part in the amateur boxing side? Have you ever?
When I was younger,
anyone in the face? Or?
Yeah, definitely grew up in the rough neighbourhood in Mount Druitt. Bidwell more specifically. Yeah. But I used to be all over that Mount Druitt sort of area. Yeah. So grew up in fights and that sort of thing, and having to defend yourself. So boxing was sort of one of those things that
hobby.
Well, yeah, it was something that I lent towards. I mean, I got into a lot of street fights in my youth. Yeah.
Yeah, look like the type to.
Well, I think now it's sort of one of those things that those sorts of experiences, especially when you're younger, and if you have the right role models, the right role models steer you in the right direction. So I was headed down the route of going to jail. I was going.
You were?
Yeah, I was. I mean, especially at 16, 17, I was walking into the gym and the boxing gym that I was training at. I started at a Mount Druitt PCYC. But I was lucky enough to come into contact with older people that had jobs, good, solid, foundational jobs, that were traveling the world and showing me that there's a different route. So I was walking into the gym with scars on my head from getting bottled and broken hands every other week. And they're like, "What's going on with you? Why you got black eyes? Why you got this? Why you got that?" And they took me away from that route, showing me there is another direction. You don't have to do what the people, because I hang around with pretty much older.
What are you, 84 born? 84?
83.
You're 83. Okay,
yeah. So yeah.
You don't take me for that sort of, I don't know, not saying upbringing, but you don't take me for that, like, I don't know. I'm not saying that you don't look like someone that's never had a fight before, but I wouldn't have thought that you've.
Yeah. I think that comes from. I think that comes from growth. I think that comes from personal growth over years, and having, like I said, being exposed to people. And my mother was very church going.
You in church?
No, not really, not myself. But she obviously instilled the same morals of religion, in terms of respect for others, love for others, giving service to others, all that sort of stuff, which I think is a good base foundation of all religions, if you want to say that. But it's the same thing that crosses over to spirituality, right? And that's where I saw through the bullshit of religion pretty early, when I seen the same guys that I was having fights with and rolling people on the train go to church where my mum went to church. And I'm like, you can't sing in the choir and roll people for $10 on the train. It sort of doesn't cancel each other out. You're sort of not following that. So I quickly went away, and those guys were, especially some of the people, some of the islanders in my area, not to say that they're all bad or anything like that. Definitely not. A lot of them are good characters. They're fun. Yeah, but they were sort of championed by the area as being nice people, and I'm like, it doesn't really cross over when you know street, when you know what street smarts are, and when you know what they do on the street versus what you see, I suppose, in the public eye. Like, it doesn't cross over. So
I mean, I think with that sort of stuff too, like, I'm not saying it's the cool category, but I remember because I went to Cambridge Park High, and that school was okay, but there was a few people that that used to do naughty stuff, and that you'd look at them and you'd look up to them, like people that got in fights in the weekend, people that used to go out and knock people out on a Friday night, walk through Penrith High Street just looking for fights, and then you hear about it on Monday, and they were the cool kids, you know, and you're like, oh.
Yeah, and I grew up when I grew up in school, I went to school, year 9 was probably my most trouble, because I repeated that year. I remember I jigged. I went to school, I passed all my tests in year 9, my original year 9. They made me repeat, and I'm like, but I still passed all my classes, even though I didn't attend enough days at school. And they're like, we don't care, you didn't hit the basic numbers on school. That's probably the turning point for me, making me repeat. I went back to the next year, not missing a day of school, all the way through year 12, not one day off.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So you've done an extra year of high school.
Of high school, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but that whole way through as well, I think through high school, even though I went to school every day, and this is what people outside, the older people outside of school that were sort of pushing me down that path, the bad path, the older guys outside on the streets, if you will. They said, you go to school, you don't have to be good, but just show up so you don't go repeat. You know what I mean? And I did do that for a little bit. And then when I started showing up with all these sorts of things, other people influenced me to not hang out with the bad influences, the bad crowd, the cool crowd, if you will, because those people did a lot of things that, upon reflection, if you try to do now with how much cyber technology there is with cameras, you go to jail quite easily. Some of the stuff that
I know. With, I was in the same sort of era, pretty much the same sort of area. I know what it's like. I spent from 16 to 22 in England, and that was pretty straight in your face. It was, like people would literally just go out on the weekend just to stab people. And it was like, that was the thing, it was crazy. I don't even know. Absolutely nuts. So, so you went from that, and I appreciate you've competed and stuff like that as well.
Bodybuilding. So I got at a point where I was doing a little bit of boxing training, and I was going to the weights gym, and I was also like doing motocross, and not necessarily like competing motocross, just riding bikes with people outside. And
you still got a bike?
No. I kept stacking it. So every time everyone's trying to get me to get a jet ski. Every time, what was happening is I either got injured for one or the other. So riding trail bikes, I always stacked it, always got injured. So it either put me out for the other two, say, get rid of it. Trainers would be like, get rid of it. And then I got to the point where I wanted to compete in bodybuilding. And the boxing trainers were like, you got to choose one. They're different energy systems. They don't work the same. I was stubborn for a little bit there, and I eventually caved and said, okay, I'll just choose bodybuilding. I'm not getting injured there. And my mum obviously pushed me towards the one that was non-punch in the facey type sport.
I don't know the field or not the industry of bodybuilding, but I don't know the field. Like I know that you got the different categories. Like what sort of level, or what are the titles? Like, is it NBC? Like what's the name still? You got the nationals, states, and all those other. So
you've definitely got different shows. You got different sort of shows. But I used to compete in natural bodybuilding, so non-drug. Non-drug. There's obviously open federations where you can compete in. A federation where you're not tested at all for substances, and that's fine. Even though it's illegal, it's not illegal to do it within the sport. Then you've got drug tested federations. All of the federations that I competed in were all non-drug tested up until the last recent ones that I did. Last one was about 2018.
Was the last one?
Was the last one. But I did non-tested. Not that I used drugs, but I was just at the point where I was like, in natural bodybuilding, I ran into 10 years of the sport, and I kept coming up against people that were enhanced and by passing the drug test. And I'm like, well, I'm not paying extra money for the membership of a tested federation, and I pay for that test to lose to somebody who I know.
So how'd you do in 2018?
2018. Well, this is where longevity comes in with bodybuilding. And my first coach was a two-time Mr. Natural Olympia, so the best of the best. And he told me early on that in bodybuilding, especially natural bodybuilding, the journey is one not in the first comp. It's one over years. It's one over the decades that you continually stay consistent and progress forward. That's when you start beating everybody. So initially, I burned my time, and that remained true in 2018. So I went up against guys, went up to 14 people in the division and untested federation, and I placed 5th, natural with no drugs.
Is that good?
That's pretty good considering everyone else was bigger than me. So
is from what I've heard, I got an old friend. I haven't spoken to him in a while, but lives up in Queensland. He used to come down and do the Australasian or the whatever it was. I don't know, whatever. It's like one in March. I don't know what one that is. But
so you got different seasons, season A, season B.
Yeah.
Usually season A will be like a Sydney to New South Wales titles or a state show. So regional and then state, and then the back end of the year will be Australian titles, and then anything else.
Is it October? Actually, it's like October. That's the Australasian one, right? Yeah. And then there's another one in March, isn't there? Like a Cronulla.
Yeah. You got to remember that. Yes, that's generally how the breakdown of the season goes for bodybuilding as a whole.
Yeah.
But there's different federations as well. So you've got the natural federations. You've got like 3 or 4 natural federations, and you've got 2 or 3 untested.
So is this industry? Because I've never really, stepped foot in it. Like I hear people talk, and I always bump into friends, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to get on stage and I'm going to compete." But that's, to me, it's always like an ego thing. They need it within themselves. For some reason, I think it's within themselves that I don't know, like they want to feel good on that stage, or they want to win, or they just owe it to themselves, right? But the people around me that I know that want to sort of compete, they never end up doing it. They always talk about doing it. But is it something where you need to sort of have your foot in the door for a long period of like time, and it's like, it's who you know? Because I know that my friend, every time he lost, he'd always be like, not saying it's a judge's fault, but he'd always say like the reason he didn't sort of win is because he used to have arguments with some of the people on Facebook. And he's he used to go head to head with them online. There's a reason I didn't win in that. But it's not that sort of...
There's an element to politics in any sport. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So especially a sport like bodybuilding, which is largely...
so you basically can't just be a blow in and fucking win. You have to be a part of the circle.
But you have to be a genetic anomaly. You have to obviously have a neutral standpoint, and you have to be aesthetically above everybody else. But there's definitely an element of politics, I suppose you would say, where people are favored based on who they know. And that, I think that's a personal bias thing as human nature. It's like if you see someone who's a stranger and you see someone who you know their journey a little bit more, you're going to resonate with their physique a little bit more based on the fact that you have a personal relationship with them. So there is that that's definitely a thing. Is that the instance in your friend's case? A lot of the times I find that people just want to make excuses.
He was always like 6%, 8% all year round. He never sort of like had that bulking off season. So he was always lean. So he'd always just come in like, at 2% body fat, and just, his legs were his thing. His legs would just be all diced up, whatever the wording is. But he was just undersized because he always wanted to stay that
the problem
lean.
was probably that for him. Was the fact that he needed to put overall mass on rather than staying in shape, coming out of shape a little bit.
The first time I went to Cronulla to go and see him, and as you know, like not everyone has a bald head, but almost nearly everyone has a bald head, and they're all tanned. And I walked into the sort of stadium part of, not the stadium, but I don't know, the part where they had the judging on. Everyone had a bald head and everyone was spray tan. And I went up to 2 people and I was like, "Hey," and they'd look around and look up, and they all look like Gollum.
Wasn't it? I was like, "Sorry, oversized clothes on." Trying not to.
And then you see him out in the sort of foyer just drinking champagne, which was weird, just so he could get that. So
you basically thins the blood vessels, relaxes the body a little bit more, especially if you're using red wine and those sorts of things. Is it port? They do that to thin the blood, to bring the blood vessels out. The sugar helps as well. So there's little tips and tricks along the way, I think, with bodybuilding. Not all of them apply to everybody, but there's definitely things that people find that work for them better than others. So I think that's always part of it. But bodybuilding, it's a different kettle of fish, and I think it is largely ego driven to a degree. I think the more that
do you think it's ego driven and all sort of
initially? I definitely do think initially. Do
you think it's completely shifted now to more image? Actually, hang on. Let me rephrase that. Do you think that because that's kind of like bodybuilding competing, but my question was like, overall sort of, I'm calling it the fitness industry. Like I feel now that the fitness industry now has just gone to like this image fest. It's not all about like, fair enough, decent diet, right supplements, and the right training. Yeah, you can look like that, but like, do you have that sort of hard work to kind of go out and sort of use those muscles to its full potential, because your body is that machine, and you just see people.
I think to answer your question, yes, I think it's more ego driven now than anyone else. Because if anyone's ever competed before in bodybuilding or physique competitions in general, especially to the point where you have to get low body fat percentage, not everyone can do it. It's like you're saying about your friends that say, I'm going to do it, and they never get on stage. Not everyone can do it. It's just as much a mental game as it is. It's like you doing ultra marathons, right? It's like heaps of people can run. Can you run 50 Ks under, pressure, under time pressure, under heat, under running up hills in different terrain? No, you fucking can't. It's just a whole different kettle of fish.
My friend, I've got a friend that lives up in Nambucca, and he does like amateur boxing and stuff like that. So he trains for boxing, and he does like 5K runs and 6K runs around his area, and he does them in like, sub 30s. So he sees all the things that I post, and my pace is like in the mid 7s to kind of 8s. So he was always saying, oh, you're like this endurance walker. And because he'd see my pace, but not knowing or elevation when I run through the mountains, or if I go from Glenbrook and I run down Jelly Bean and up
flat.
He's running on flat. He came down on the weekend, and I took him for a run, and I took him for this 10K loop through the mountains, and he didn't give me an apology, but he goes, man, that's beastie shit. Like, he goes, I would see, because it's crazy running, but I mean, I think that, like, I'm not saying that because I've turned into running, that my opinion now on the whole bodybuilding thing, because I kind of insult him a little bit, but not too much. But yeah, I kind of feel like I'm not saying I feel like I'm better than that, but I've taken a different path and go, let's do the athleticism part of it.
Yeah, you're worried on function, not so much about what you look. Do I think that bodybuilding and the fitness industry in general is largely superficial?
Yeah.
If that's the question, yes, definitely. It's taken a different path, especially considering the last fitness expo that they had in Sydney, the Firelex. All right. I think that was 2017, somewhere there, 2018.
What's that called?
The Firelex. So it's a big fitness convention they have. They usually. I used to love it when I was younger. All the pro bodybuilders used to come out and I go, "Oh, I'm gonna meet so and so."
That Brad Castleberry.
I don't even know who's that.
Oh my god, man, he's like the biggest. He's just like this jacked up, he's like advertises for Bang and stuff like that. You've probably seen him around there. And he's just like, he's been blasted online for using fake weights. Like he'll like bench fucking 4 plates or fucking 6 plates like this. And he's just like, he's about 5'10". Just all jacked up.
With the introduction of Instagram, I went to the latest one and I was seeing Olympia competitors, guys that were in the best of the best in the world, in their categories, standing doing nothing, whilst there's Instagram models selling supplements,
selling more than
them. Their lines were out the door, and I was like, done something with their career? Posted a picture that got 1,000 likes.
Well, that's it.
So when we talk about is it superficial? Yeah, it's superficial, but it's downgraded to the point where people are like, I can achieve. Zach Pererna, whatever his name is, from EHP Labs. He had his line that was so big. He had a haircut like Justin Bieber, and he's a good-looking kid. Semi-tanned, semi-big arms, not completely shredded. And then you had a guy who had placed second at the Olympia, won the Mr. Universe, won nearly everything in other guys like Rich Gaspari. And I'm like, how can no one know who this guy is, but know who that is? It completely left me dumbfounded. So that was the point where I was like, Instagram for me, I stopped following all these pages because I'm like, I'm feeding into that shit. If I want to follow an athlete, a real athlete that goes through the mental struggles, because bodybuilding, you got to have respect for the fact that to get at 3%, even your friend, to be from 6 to 2 or 3%, that takes mental toughness. To be able to push yourself the same way it takes you mental toughness to push through the last 20 Ks of your ultra marathon. It takes mental toughness to get yourself to the point where you're that lean, where everything else doesn't matter around you, and you're just focusing on the one goal at hand.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine your whole body would completely not shut down, but obviously whatever you like, I don't understand the whole gist of it with calories in, calories out and stuff like that, and trying to burn those last bits of fat. Like, you'd be drained for energy.
Yeah.
Like, of course, and I know what it's like, with your gut biome and, introducing specific foods into your diet and how your mind works and stuff like that. But there'd be a point where they'd go, 10 weeks in, 11 weeks in, just go, what the fuck am I doing this?
Yes, 100%.
This is bullshit.
And some competitors with the diet side of things, because like I said, the majority of it is, I think, mental, if not, like not all of it, but obviously there's a physical aspect to it. But I think a lot of them deal with the mental hardness of it every single day. You know what I mean? Especially if they're inclined to emotionally eat, if they're inclined to be easily led by other people. Because you remember, you've got to shut everybody up, even the family going, what are you doing, Jonathan? Why don't you just have your birthday cake? Do you know what I mean? So there's different aspects to bodybuilding that people don't see past the physical side of things. I think initially when people start off bodybuilding, it is largely ego driven. But I think it crosses over, especially with me. When I've competed at Sydney titles, I won those. I've done New South Wales titles, won those. I've done Australian titles, and I've come damn close to winning those. And I've competed against guys in massive lineups that the first two guys that beat me turned pro. And I'm like, fuck, this close. But again, it's a game of longevity.
Are you still going to jump back in it in the future? Or
now I do it for a different reason. That's where I was going with what I was saying, is the fact that now I don't really compete for me to beat anyone or win a title, as you say. So the ego part of it is gone. Now it's just, and that's why I don't care about me competing against people that are untested anymore. I compete against people. So I compete really to get on stage to see what I look like with the same conditions and where the improvements are for me now.
So is this a... Okay. Yeah.
So what I like to see in traditional bodybuilding, the big guys, the Mr. Olympias, those sorts of guys, is the improvements that bodybuilder makes.
Actually,
from 1 year to the next.
Do you look at, say, I see a lot of things in the fitness industry now, and I look at people and I see some of the things that they take and how crazy they go all for that image, right? But do you see people like Ronnie Coleman and see the state and the condition that he's in and kind of think, is it really worth it sometimes? Do you know what I mean? Like, look at his comeback with all of his back issues and stuff like that. Fair enough, he was a beast and he won all these, Olympia titles and stuff like that. But, for the amount of stuff you pump in your body, for that, that trophy, for this, like, is it really worth pushing your body through all of that pain and 10 years? Like, I think one of his quotes is, he wishes he'd done one more rep, or he wishes he'd done like 2 reps, or he wishes he'd put another plate on.
Yeah.
And people praise that, like, as if, but like, is it really worth that?
Yeah. Well, I look at the quality of life for him. For me, no. For him, he wanted to leave a legacy. Do you know what I mean?
But at that time, because I don't think he would have. Is that really what he wanted to do? He wanted to leave a legacy.
He did want to get the most consecutive Olympia wins.
Did he? Or not?
He matched. I don't think he actually beat. He didn't beat, I think, Lee Haney's record, which was 8. I think he got 8 as well. But at the end of the day, I mean, that's, I suppose, up to the individual. I personally wouldn't do that. But I mean, in the same token, you can use Ronnie as an example. You can look at guys like Jay Cutler, who was one of Ronnie's biggest rivals. He's relatively fine. He went for his career. I think a reflection of Ronnie's injuries was a reflection of, one, how he trained, and the neglect.
What, like the heaviness of it?
The heaviness, the reps, and the fact that he genetically got away with a lot more based on his genetics. With some of the bad form and that sort of stuff that he used to use, Jay Cutler was a little bit more methodical in the way that he trained. He trained with lots more volume and less weight, and still stimulated the muscle tissue and still got improvement. I mean, there was a period of time where Jay Cutler got told to downsize his waist because it was a bit too thick. And this is where my love for bodybuilding in that respect goes from not just my personal love of seeing my body change and how I develop, but Jay Cutler proved if you focus on one thing, which his waist was too blocky, right? He focused the next year on bringing his waistline smaller. So he bought a better package the next year and didn't put more size on. He just made the waistline smaller and everything else looked better.
So how would you do that?
Well, I think his was more so a breathing conditioning side of things.
So like vacuums and
making
stuff?
sure he's working
the
core.
Vacuums actually work?
They do, yeah. Well, you're getting more control over the midsection.
Yeah.
So obviously, when you get to these sorts of sizes that these guys are, they're not really worried about functional control anymore of the body. They're just worried about getting as big as possible.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times, especially with drugs that they use and that sort of thing, that can make it blow out as well. Yeah. There's debate over that, but at the same time, I mean, breathing works. If you notice when you start breathing through the diaphragm and that sort of thing, your waistline can come in. Yeah.
Only like probably 3 times in 15 years. I've never stuck to it. I reckon if you do it over a month though, you can lose some.
Definitely, inches. Yeah, just bringing the abdominal control and bringing your consciousness to that breath. Do you know what I mean? It really does make a difference and that sort of thing. Arnold said that in one of the the first pumping iron about, making the shoulders larger and that sort of thing. And that's where my love for bodybuilding really came from, in the way that you can shape the body and change it in which way you want. Obviously, like a more aesthetic look, smaller, more indicative of what a natural type of physique is. Smaller, small waist, round muscle bellies.
Well, I mean, you bring that waist in and you pump those delts out. You've just brought that symmetry.
100%,
I mean? And that's all. What it's to do with.
And that's why when I compete against bigger guys, I was lucky enough when I first started competing, I was exposed to a guy from Slovakia named Joseph. I used to call him Big Joseph, but he was actually only 70 kilos. But he used to kill guys, giants, like 100 kilos, 98 kilos. He used to compete against them, mash them into the floor. I was like, he proves to me you don't need to be big to be dangerous. Because he was really small, really good genetics. He was relatively lean all the time as well. But really aesthetic look. You see him on stage, he looked like he was 80 kilos and he was only 70. He was so lean and conditioned in every body part. That was like, I'd done the dumb thing of trying to eat what he ate.
Did it work?
Not knowing. No, I got fat. He had a super fast charge metabolism. This is a guy who used to be able to drink vodka on a prep.
Yeah, wow.
He just genetically was fine with that sort of stuff in his body and not have that. He used to never put on body fat like that. So, but to see him beat big guys, always had that respect for him. He was always really humble. Always respectful, said hello, shook people's hands, bowed to them. You know what I mean? Very, very respectful. So I was lucky to be exposed to guys like him in bodybuilding, who the ego was not really a thing. He used to wear a shirt, and people, I remember saying to one guy who was a model, he was a model, and he was on all the muscle mags back in the day. And I said to him, he goes, "Oh, who was that?" When I was talking to him, I said, "Oh, that's Joseph. He's the Australian champion." He goes, "What's he this champion of? Being skinny?" and then sure enough, he came out in the overall. And beat this guy didn't compete. This guy was just a model. He came out, took his gear off on stage and beat all these massive guys. And I just looked at the model and I was like,
there you go.
And he was like, oh, sorry. Like I was just like, that's the Australian. That's why he's the Australian champion. Just because in the shirt he looks.
I've never heard of it. Yeah. Although I don't really know that many.
Well, he was only around. He was only around for about 2 years, and then he went back to Europe. So he didn't stick around long, unfortunately. So, but I was, like I said, I had the privilege of meeting him, and later on I competed, and I remember when I won a New South Wales title, he messaged me. And he was like, "Hey man, seen your physique." And this was 6 years later after he'd went back, and he was like, "Man, well done. You look awesome. Keep going." So that's the type of people that I was privileged to meet along the way.
So can you see coming up soon? Like, I mean, are you gonna get back on that stage again?
No, there's no drive for me whatsoever. No, I do it for me. So at the moment, I'm focused on my mobility. I've gone back to a little bit more boxing, like you said, with the floor to ceiling ball and that sort of thing. Just trying to get my mobility back. I tend to find that I knock my posture out a fair bit by overdeveloping muscle groups when I was younger. And it really does.
So what do you mean by that? What did you?
Like overdeveloping the mirror muscles. Yeah. So the chest and shoulders, biceps. So sort of hunched over a little bit more. Boxing doesn't help that either. But
like that.
Yeah, pretty much you're in this position, so everything's tight from the front. So trying to open up that posterior chain, which is a lot of the times when I get beaten, it's from the back. So I'm like, well, the only way to fix that is to tear the whole thing down, pretty much just loosen everything up from the front.
I don't really train back that much, but now I'm starting to realize, like, as I kind of get older, like you need that. You need that lower back support because it pulls everything together.
I think the core and back, when we're talking about from a fundamental training standpoint, doing things as my kids do kickboxing, and it's mainly because it's core driven. Especially with kicking and that sort of thing, you're engaging the core muscles a lot of the times. But the fundamentals of training, especially if you're going to be doing strength type training, anything that's activating the back and core, everything else will fall into place. If you look at a gymnast, their core and back are very strong.
I've noticed
and then,
but is that like the symmetry sort of aspect of it all?
I think things just work. If you've got a stable core, then every other lift that you do, together. Everything else, every other lift that you do will be strong.
I struggle with it, but it's for me, it's like, genetically, I don't have it. And I know that I need to put in some hard work to get all that sort of shape in. And it's definitely a hard thing. Training that core and getting it all tied in and
especially if you're not used to it. If you're not used to it and it's not a priority for you, I made it a priority for me, and it's getting better and better and better as we go. So if I get to a point where I'm happy with my mobility, because right now my fitness is pretty decent. With someone who
define your fitness. What do you mean by
that? Well, fitness, I'll be talking about stuff. I'll be talking about cardio in terms of not necessarily run to a degree, but more so like my boxing, my HIIT training.
Do you do any yoga, meditation, or anything?
Yeah, I try to do yoga. Not as much as I'd like. I do once every.
Yoga? Do you go studio yoga, or you do it?
I like doing yin studio yoga.
You like
hot
yin?
yoga? Yeah.
Have you been to Yin Yoga at St Mary's?
I went there when it first opened. I haven't been able to visit since, just because of the booking system on the app. I'm not really big with that. I like
the Mind Body app.
I like just rocking up to somewhere and just doing it because my schedule doesn't.
The times are all whacked now, like with the COVID thing. So I mean, a lot of the yins like at 6 o'clock, and it's hard to get to. So you go down to Zoo and do. You go down to Zoo and do that Sunday afternoon ones.
Yeah, usually 4 o'clock.
How do you find yin in a hot yoga? Like I'm not saying I don't rate the yin down there, but I think if you're gonna when you're doing yin yoga, you need to add that sort of magical touch to it with the music and the bell and whatever they call it, the chime.
Yeah, they do that.
Oh, they do.
Yeah, they do that. Yeah, there's one instructor that does that.
I went there like a couple of times, and everything that they said was the opposite to what Nin told me. Because Nin kind of goes down to the basics, and they teach you all the foundations of it all, and tell you what it's all about, and read your poems, and just tell you everything. Go to the other one, and they go, you lay there in the posture, you're like, no, that's completely wrong.
I mean, with the Zoo, the trainers change, so I don't know exactly how that all
well, I know a couple from Nin have gone over there, and so maybe that's the new one. So do you find anything out of the yoga itself? I
just find it relaxes me, it recenters my mind, especially to be able to let go of thoughts. That's the biggest thing that I get out of yoga in particular. Like I said, I don't do it as much as I can, but I try to meditate every single morning when I go and I do just standard walks in the morning.
Do you do affirmations?
Yep.
Do you have, I'm not saying do you have any secrets, but do you have any specific sort of mantras or affirmations you do? Or that you'd like to just share?
More so, yeah. Well, it's mine's,
I'll tell you my three.
Mine's relating to service, really. Bringing wealth into my life so I can help my community and serve others. And then being thankful for the relationship I have with my mum and my kids and that sort of thing. Obviously, wealth is one of those things in the respect of trying to
financial wealth or
financial wealth to try and not necessarily. I don't want it to sound superficial because it's more so putting me in a position where I could give back more to others. So if I'm in a financial position to be able to help others, that's what I do. No matter how much wealth I have, I know if I have more wealth, I can do that more for other people. And that's what we've tried to do with the shop. I've tried to create a hub where people feel comfortable to come down.
You've got a bit of a community happening.
I've
seen.
And that's what we try to do. My affirmation around money is more so if this goes financially well, I can do more for that. out there. Do you know what I mean? It means I can branch into more things and help more people, not necessarily get something back out of it.
Do you think that you learnt that out of the boxing sort of way? Because the boxing community is sort of a bit like that as well, really. Like I from my looking at the sort of boxing world, like it's always like you get kids off the street, but what you're giving is you're helping them to take them off the street. Does that make sense? So do you think that kind of?
I don't think I got that from boxing. I don't know whether that's.
But no, what I mean is that's how I look at boxing. I think that like boxing, like you see the YMCA gyms and stuff like that, like that's always boxing. Like I feel like they get people off the street, like they're kind of giving back to the community as well.
Yeah.
Like I'm saying that in a sense of, to me, that's how I looked at. That's what boxing does as well.
You know? Yeah. Well, I think that'll be more government organisations trying to keep people active so they stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
And that's what really, and that's a good thing. And definitely, I think with myself, I personally think I get that from being lucky enough to have people that, like I said, have been examples to me where I've like, well, that's the way to live your life. Not to mention just general things in terms of spirituality that I come across where I'm like, well, that's finding my purpose as a man, a masculine man, trying to find my purpose and my direction and going, what is my purpose? What is my direction?
Sometimes you need that sort of feminine side as well. Sometimes
there's definitely a balance.
The yin and yang balance.
You need that. But I think I found, because I was raised by a single mom, right? So it's sort of one of those things that I think the feminine side of things is always present there in terms of being caring and nurturing, but making sure I have a direction and a purpose. And I found that was my purpose, and that's what I feel good doing, is helping other people in a positive light and trying to put, be helpful to the community around me, and try not to take away from it. Because that's what I've seen when I've seen these guys rolling people on the train. I'm like, you're not actually staying true to your service, if you will. You know what I mean? You're saying one thing, but you're not being congruent with what you're doing here. I try to make sure that I'm congruent the whole way through. I'm just lucky enough that I was experienced to be able to defend myself as a man. And as a person, but not let it get to my ego to the point where I start going out and actively trying to use that to have something over somebody else. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's an amalgamation of things over life that has put me into that position where I'm like, you know what, this is what I feel good doing, is helping other people. So they're my affirmations, if you want to give me yours.
Mine is sometimes when I go for a run, or if I'm in a meditation class, or if I'm meditating at home, or if I'm in like a Shavasana or whatever, I know that there's always three. One of them I'm not forgotten, but one's definitely inner peace, greatness, and success. I always use, when I'm either returning myself back to the breath, and whether I'm in a posture or whatever I'm doing, it's always, greatness, and just, like sometimes I do deprivation float tanks. And I find that in them, I go through sort of these powerful sort of meditation sort of movements in there, and I just kind of yell through it. It's like, my mantra is greatness. And I mean, inner peace, I mean, what more could you ask for? And success, you can define success in so many different ways, and greatness is, any sort of way you want to look at it. So I think for that, me, allows me to be, to put it all into play through sort of my day-to-day life, and benefits me. It completely benefits like my life. The reason I'm doing this and doing these sort of, chats with people, and getting people online and chat with them as well. Like what I've learned over the years is, you need to do that inner work on yourself, and you need to kind of find that inner balance and get used to who you are, and go out there and share a message, spread a message, and say, hey, look, like there's things out there available to make yourself, better, and talking between two people and stuff like that. You know, it's where we live in this society where everyone's always either online yelling at people or abusing people, or there's always drama, or there's all this stuff where, no one's taking the time anymore to sort of find that inner peace between two people, have a conversation, share a message, which I'm all about, because my sort of journey in life, and, I come in here and I buy supplements from you guys, and it's good to chat and, know more about you and stuff like that. But,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
get experience to people shot in the face.
Yeah, man, that actually blew my mind.
It's funny. It blew his face.
I felt so
it blew his
uncomfortable.
face
I felt
off.
so uncomfortable.
Did you? Yeah.
But it was actually interesting. Well, not interesting, but I've had a big day today, and I was like, not stressing out about doing this, but like, oh, should we cancel? Should we get it done? I'm like, I didn't know what we're going to put into this, but this is just free chat. But hearing now, I'm like, good. It's
for everyone watching. Jonathan at one point was standing there with his mouth open. I said, John, are you all right? Because your mouth open, you're catching flies. So very interesting. But I think people like that come into your life, they're there to teach you something or bring you a lesson or make you see things. I think that put us in a good position right now to kickstart off this actual conversation. Do you know what I mean? It's something interesting to talk about at the minimum, right? But I remember one time there was a homeless guy out the front of the shop, and he came into the shop and he was dirty and he had dirt all over his hands, looked like he hadn't smelled as well. No, he came in the shop and he said to me, I don't want to bother you because I'm very sorry to ask, but have you got any work I can do for $5? To get something to eat. I looked at him and I said to him, look, man, I actually appreciate the fact that you offered work and didn't ask for a handout. I gave him $10. Okay. He took the money and I said, look, he started trying to argue with me. Oh, I can do stuff. I said, I know you can do stuff.
Yeah.
Take it. Thanks for actually doing what he gave me a lesson he didn't know about.
What was it?
Right, so I'll tell you in a sec. But he went outside. Okay. You know what he did?
What?
I watched him from the window. He went outside. He looked at the $10, and he debated with himself whether he comes back and gives it back. Right?
Wow. So he had a full-on, not argument, but he had like a conversation with himself.
He wanted to not take a handout. He wanted to work for his money. Wow. And I had to go to the door and say, bro, don't worry about it. I got you. It's good. And he ended up walking away. Right? He walked away. Made me feel good, right? But I just paid $10 for a lesson and this was a point where COVID started trying to hit. You know what I mean? And my business was at the point where it was like, numbers are dropping. I'm starting to get worried. And I was like, that guy just gave me the greatest lesson. He came into my life, showed me that if I'm down in the dirt, my hands are dirty, I haven't slept or eaten in days, I've got 2 hands, 2 feet, and a heartbeat. Do exactly the same as that guy's doing. Go and ask people to work for money, and make yourself valuable to the world.
Well, that's it.
So that was the lesson. I got $10. Best lesson I ever had. It was like $10. That was a pretty good lesson for $10.
Add value to the world. So that's your lesson for you to add value to the world.
For me to add value to the world in any which way. And then obviously, if I'm good at adding that value, you get reimbursed in currency, food, whatever it is.
Did you find any good come in from that? Or?
I didn't expect it. I wasn't looking for it. It may have come. Yeah. The lesson is the karma, the good thing I think I got back from it.
I'm hearing we got the guy got stabbed yesterday or this morning. The guy got stabbed this morning. Guy got shot 5 times in the face this afternoon. Not in the face this afternoon, but whatever.
We met him this afternoon.
And the homeless guy. So yeah,
these are all lessons that I take. So when we look at things that happen in my life, I know I do this. I don't know if you're the same, but when I try to look at the lesson in every little thing. So if it's a good, like that guy getting shot in the face, he would never think 6 years later down the track he's coming and telling that story and connecting with people.
And he got hit by a car.
He did get hit by a car.
And he got stabbed in the ass.
He got stabbed in the ass by
homosexual.
It was a knife. It was a knife. I confirmed it was a knife and nothing else.
Oh yeah, not a dick.
That he wouldn't have that breaking down those barriers with people if he didn't have something to talk about, and he had proof. It wasn't just him making up stories. I think when I look at things like that, things that happen in my life, I try to look for the lesson in every single instance. So even if it's not ideal for me, if our mate come through the door and the homeless guy come in with a knife and say, "Give me your money," which I've had happen before at St. Mary's. Someone's come in to rob me.
Inside job.
No.
Not a conspiracy?
No, not a conspiracy. No, we know.
I know who.
No. But like,
I know about 9/11.
Like, I just look at that and I go, okay, what can this teach me? What did I learn from this situation? And then try and put myself into,
So every
shoes.
almost, not everything day to day, but almost every lesson through life, you kind of use that for a lesson and you look into it.
I look deeper than the actual superficial, this is just the guy who just got shot in the face. It's like, okay, why? I haven't.
Can I ask you a question that's not personal?
Yep.
But do you smoke marijuana?
No.
Okay. I just didn't know whether you smoked marijuana and you went deep inside your thoughts to kind of reflect on how you are. Because I know that some people like to do some inner work by smoking a bit of weed and, and find, I don't know, like find their faults.
Yep.
See how they can work out to be a better person.
I'm always doing that without weed, to be honest. I look at things and I go, how can I be the best version of myself? And that's a part of my, I suppose.
So if we were to take something from here and go, and I was to ask you a question right now and go, what would be the best version of yourself and how would you like the world to see you? Or how would you like to see somebody, let's say somebody is on the other side of this, like a teenage kid or a young kid that kind of needs a little bit of guidance and needs a little bit of help or something, right? But if you could share a message to what you've kind of been trying to say, like what would that kind of be?
I suppose when we're talking about the example we should set, or what are we talking about?
I lost the word that because you said a word that made me trigger that question. So, but I forgot the base of the word because I know you're pushing for time, and I'm like, we got to wrap this up.
Okay, so when I talk about like being the best version of yourself,
that's it. The best version of yourself. If you were to give an example of the best version of yourself, and you were to, someone outer was to see this and go, okay, I'm gonna use that and sort of grow on it.
This is what I'll give you. This is what I'll give you.
This is what
my idea, what I work towards.
Yeah.
To be the best version of myself.
That's it.
I try to be the most emotionally sound person that I can be in terms of not being taken off my emotional center. That means not being reactive.
Yes.
Being considerate and empathetic, which is part of a feminine trait, being nurturing to people that need it. Mm-hmm. Making sure I bring value to the world in whatever service I decide to bring. So if I believe my service is laying bricks, then be the best fucking damn bricklayer there is on the fucking side.
You ever laid a brick?
I used to do it when I was younger. I never laid bricks, but I definitely fucking slung mud.
Yeah, right.
Definitely slung mud. Yeah. So, being emotionally sound, definitely bringing value to the world, and making sure the other best version of myself would be the best father and best example to not only my children, but other people's children. So when people look at you, they go, that's what a man looks like. That's what a good person looks like. That's a person that is well-rounded and full stack in every sense of the word when we're talking about that mentally, spiritually, physically. So not only should I physically look strong and be strong and healthy, but I should also be mentally and spiritually healthy and well-rounded. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that.
That's my best, my goal. I'm not 100% there yet. I think everybody's got their shit that they have to work through because we've all got different upbringings and different triggers and different bits and pieces like that. I think everyone can work towards that best version of themselves.
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, look, this is kind of my point, not everything, but there are people deep down that have like past traumas and indented traumas from like sort of birth, and even if you use the fitness industry as an example, everyone works on the outside. We all need to work on the inside. We all 100%. Need to work on being that better person, externally, internally. For example, for anyone that you deal with or you interact with on a day-to-day basis, you know what I mean, and kind of share it. Like, drop the ego. It's not a competition. It's not I look better than you or you look better than me and we got to get first place or it's competition. It's not that. It's find your humbleness within inside yourself, find that inner peace within inside yourself, and do the work, spend 15 minutes of your day, meditate, get grounded, find that calmness, find that still, the yin and the yang. I think everybody needs it. And my journey, my life, what I've experienced over the last couple of years man, yoga, you find everything you need, all the answers you need for that, and find your true self internally. So
true kingdom is within.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
so,
that's what they say, right? So I think that it is. Look for wholeness within yourself, because everything you have is within.
It. I mean, look, you can't, like, you think about it, like, this is a privilege to live this life and to, be able to live. Like, whether you live for 70 years, 80 years, 90 years, like, it's a privilege, you know. Pouring junk food down your face every single day, going through Macca's drive-through, being lazy, watching every episode on fucking Netflix, watching TV in the afternoon. Like, if that's how you're going to live your life, you're really taking the piss out of your body. You're abusing your body. Like,
you're distracted from the life experience.
Like, COVID itself has showed how vulnerable we are as a society and how weak we actually are as a society, where we all got scared, and which kind of driven me to kind of share these sort of messages and start my YouTube channel and stuff like that, because, like, it's just ridiculous that we think that we need to lock ourselves indoors in fear of this virus, when the human body itself, if you treat it right and get in tune with it right, that's the best sort of defense system that you need. You know what I mean? You don't have to lock yourself indoors in fear and wear a mask. Like, it's nuts. So,
I agree.
So, but anyway, look, we'll wrap this up because I think we pushing the time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming on. This is episode 11 here, the Game Experience. So thanks for that. And
thank you very much.
I'll see you on the circuit.
All right, man.
All right. Take care.
That's good. Good. We went for a while.